Hello and welcome to the 6Ls podcast. This is Mike Nicholson from 6Ls. Today I'm going to be speaking to Tomas Forsback from Readpeak. Thomas, how are you?
Very fine, thank you.
Good, welcome. Before we go any further, I just want to shout out and say a big thank you to Lumen Research, the sponsors of this podcast. Lumen are an eye tracking technology company that help brands to plan, buy, measure and optimize campaigns towards real human attention and increase the outcomes as a result. So thank you to the team at Lumen. So Thomas, you're in the UK. How's it been so far?
Very nice.
Yeah. Had a nice trip. You came at the right time of year because it's so lovely at this time of year, isn't it?
Yeah, I love it.
Like the freezing temperatures, the rain, it's just beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you couldn't have picked a better time. So, welcome. Thanks very much for coming in. So Readpeak. Perhaps you could give us a little bit of a potted history on how Readpeak came to be, what your career was before Readpeak, and what inspired you to launch the company, please.
Of course. So first of all, we founded Readpeak 10 years ago in Finland, Helsinki. And before that, I had for a short while worked in the media industry on the print side of things. Actually, before that, 10 years in NGOs. So really no background in media or advertising at all, and especially not in ad tech. I think that, I worked just before we started a company for a Swedish company. We were doing print inserts. I was selling ads and mainly advertorials. And it was quite good company, quite lucrative. And I started to think of, how could you translate that into a digital product? And I think the benefits of the format that we were doing on print was really that, it was a super attractive format for the brands. You engage with users who read about your story or services or products in a very light manner. And at the same time, great, format for the publishers. And of course, they made a good chunk of money on that. So when I took that into the digital world, we were thinking, how can we combine those benefits in one product? So of course, it needs to be scalable. It has to be valuable for the end user, the reader. It has to make sense from a brand point of view. It has to be interesting from a publisher's point of view, but it of course have to be a business for us as well. And we started off in 2014. I think that, we were kind of searching our way for the first 2 years, and originally we even had, content producers. We did content strategy. We were doing like everything from production to reporting and running the campaigns. But from day one, we started to build our own tech. And after a few years, some agencies started asking if they could actually get access to the platform themselves. And at that point, we raised a bit of capital. We rebuilt the platform to a self-serve platform, onboarded the agencies directly. We ditched the production part and that stuff, and became purely a platform to scale programmatic native.
Okay, so programmatic native, I've heard you speak about that before, premium programmatic native. What is that? What does that mean to you? Because as with a lot of things in digital media and advertising and ad tech, everyone seems to have a slightly different view on what things are. So what does it mean to you, premium programmatic native?
Yeah, programmatic have been around for a while, but when we started, it was really early. And I think that, we actually enabled more and more programmatic functionalities along the way in the first years. I think that, programmatic came originally from a thought that, we can buy online any given inventory. Then we target down with audiences. And it really doesn't matter if they are seen on a premium site or a long tail site or even a blog, as long as we can reach the right audience. I think that since then, a lot have happened. The whole question about brand safety, brand suitability, transparency in the ecosystem. So I think that where we came in was that we really early started to build a super transparent platform where with true programmatic, you want to get the reach, of course, but you want to be able to control where that reach comes from. And I think that for us, we kind of worked out the platform, both with the buying side, interviewing them, figuring out how the optimal way of driving native on programmatic would work, but also with the publishers. And one of the things that the feedback we got from publishers early on was really that they said that they want to be able to control the quality of the campaigns coming through. And I think that have been a guiding star for us all from the very beginning. And even the biggest publishers we are working with, they have like 100% trust that whatever comes through our pipe is high quality, premium, and that's kind of the philosophy, that we combine premium brands and advertisers with premium publishers, and everything in between should be premium there.
Okay, and could you talk a little bit about what happens as the ad hits the page, if you like? Because from my point of view, looking at it, and I'm going to obviously I've become a client since we first met, so I'm a big fan, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But I think the premiumness of the publishers you work with is insane. Like it's real top tier, which is a really big sort of benefit. But it's also the premiumness of the experience as it lands on the page, right? Yeah. So with some native advertising, I think it can be a little bit like it's designed once in a studio, and then it's delivered to 100 different sites, and it looks the same on every different site. Yeah. Whereas that's not the case with Readpeak. So if you could maybe talk about that a little bit more, about how it kind of morphs itself to the environment that it's within.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So that's also one thing that we built in from the very very beginning. If you buy through other platforms, you mainly scale the same creative across all different inventory, which means that it doesn't adjust to that local news site. In our case, we build a system that we identify what page this ad is going to be viewed on, and then change the template, the headline, the format, the colors to adjust to that local news site or national news site. And that really is the point with native, blending into the news feed, so it's actually more of a content experience than an ad experience. And I think that really reflects also on the performance and the metrics and the quality of the traffic that you can get. And I used to say early days, explaining what is native for people, I had this story where I said that if you wake up in the morning, you take your favorite news app, you start scrolling the news, you're never thinking what are the ads of today, you're thinking what is the content of today. And that's where native comes in, where brands can become a part of the content experience rather than the ad experience. But in order for that to happen, you really have to be able to kind of tailor each and every ad to each and every site. And that's what we have figured out, how to do that programmatically at scale. And then there's other elements to it, of course, as well. So then under the hood, we have built a machine learning system. An engine that actually predicts and understands that what placements on the publisher's site actually works for what advertiser during what time and for what kind of people. And that really is the other side of kind of creating the inventory in a way that really makes sense for native campaigns. As an example, we had I was checking some campaign on a massive site in Germany, and our machine learning engine could narrow down or target a combination of different data points. I think it was over 200,000 different combinations of data points. But then when you look at the data, there was roughly about 100 plus, combinations that's really performed well. And out of those, there was 40 that was super high performing. So rather than just running generally run of network, those ads, based on the templating, but based on the machine learning, we could narrow down on each and every site that what is the best performing for that specific campaign. So we're kind of living in a world where we're trying to combine the effect and the machine learning part of running programmatically, but the premium ad experience for the end user as well.
Yeah, and what I really like about it as well is because you charge on a cost per click, then you're kind of you've got skin in the game. You need to make this work, otherwise you don't get paid, right? And the publisher, if it doesn't work, the publisher doesn't get paid either. So the advertising comes to this, and because everyone says that they've got this amazing cloud of data and ways to target and all the rest of it, but if you're buying it on a CPM, then kind of the risks on you of whether that works or not, right? But when it's on a cost per click, obviously that's not the case. So as I alluded to before, I met you through Blake, who's actually sat off camera here, Blake Seabrook, who runs your business here in the UK. And we agreed that we should get you on the podcast. And then we became a client of yours, and you became a client of ours in that time before that's happened. So I think that's the first time that's ever happened on the Six Sales podcast, and we're coming up to 100 episodes. So slightly weird one. I feel like I know quite a lot about your business already because I've been using it. So I just wanted to share, and for those listening, this is not a paid promotion. Nobody asked me to say this, but I've just been kind of blown away with Readpeak from a B2B point of view, certainly. So Six Sales used to focus primarily on LinkedIn and helping senior C-suite executives get in front of their audience for their company through LinkedIn only. Started off organic, moved to organic paid, but we wanted to expand beyond the walls of LinkedIn so we could offer something else. And we were looking for a B2B DSP, and we've spoken to a number of them. And the reason that we settled with Readpeak is because it fits perfectly with our ethos of people-shaped communications. So if you look at the news pages, quite often there's a person in the picture. It might be the CEO of the company or the bank or whoever's doing the talking. And we know that works better than brands. People pay more attention to people than brands. And what we were able to do is use your technology to drive real engaged views to content. So using the Six Cells example, because I have sign off for that, obviously, I can't talk about client stuff without their approval, is we put episodes of the Six Cells podcast that were recorded in this very room with Fern Potter from Multilocal and Mike Follett from Lumen Research, and we put that content on our website, and we then bought programmatic advertising through Readpeak across the Guardian, the Times, the Independent, all of the sort of broadsheets aimed at the business sections and marketing content. And hundreds of other sites other than that, but we could self-select them, and then we could say, okay, we want to try and put this in front of people that might be interested in marketing and advertising. And I'll be really honest with you, and you probably a bad thing for somebody that's made their living out of advertising to say, but I've never been massively trusting of the idea of buying stuff on a cost per click because of the potential for frauds to come into the system. If you're paying only on a click, then, you know, if that becomes the goal that people get paid on, then can it be sort of gamed? I suppose it would be the cynicism in the back of my mind. But the first time we ran a campaign, I watched like a hawk the numbers in Readpeak and cross-referenced them with the numbers in Google Analytics, easy for me to say, and they were near perfect, which in and of itself is quite remarkable. But what was more important than that for me, what was really interesting and shows that the targeting must be really spot on, is that our average session time on the website before we put the campaign live was about 2.5 minutes, I think, something like that. It oscillates during the day, obviously, because we don't have a high volume site, it goes up and down, but it was about 2 or 3 minutes, let's say. And after we put the campaign live, which was driving people to come and watch the Six Cells podcast on the site, it went up to 25 minutes. Yeah. I think it was 3 minutes day one, 25 minutes day two. Now that isn't people bouncing in and out by mistake. You know, that's a really engaged audience. Yeah. And what we're really excited about is we want to roll that out to all of our clients, and we will do definitely because it's so powerful. And I think as well, when you've got that from a B2B point of view, when you've got that business audience, and you can target them in really relevant ways and drive to content that will be relevant to them, then that's really super important. But of course, most of your revenue will come from B2C brands. So what I'd love to ask and get a little bit more of insight into is how are marketers and brands using native advertising from a B2C point of view, and how does that differ to the way that they use display?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think that, with the background in Nordics, I think that we were quite early on defining on how native could be used and how what is the actual value of native. Now we're across 10 markets in Europe, and what we can see is that native in many markets have really been pushed down to this, low funnel, click to conversion, clickbait type of format, and partially ruined the reputation of it. And I think that the real added value of native is in the mid funnel. And of course, you can drive, low funnel engagement, conversions, and you were talking about great metrics, and that's along the funnel, of course, important. But what we can see and learnings from those markets is that when let's take a car brand as an example. A lot of them would do, high level branding, nice car, punchlines, whatever, big billboards. And then they are driving low funnel, test drives or build your car type of campaigns. And they are lacking any relevant format to actually bridge that gap. How do you take a user from, brand awareness down to a lower funnel and actually engagement with something? And a lot of brands find native as a perfect format. There are several reasons for that. So let's take me as an example. We were getting a new flat in Helsinki some years ago, and we knew that we will renovate the flats. And I had already 1 year before we bought the flat decided I will get a new PA system, a sound system to the flat. So actually, I already then had decided what brand and what pieces of gear I want to get. And what was that? Because I had already researched, I had read some stories, seen some YouTube videos, and I had made up my mind. And then 1 year later, we got the flat, we renovated it, and I actually ordered them. But I did a last check, is there anything new in the market, on Google. But actually, my mind was already set to that. And that is the kind of idea of the funnel, is that people make their decisions super early. They decide what is their next car, what is the next thing they are going to buy, or the next computer they are going to buy, far before they are actually buying it. And a lot of the low funnel activations, that is focusing on people that are ready to buy. They are Googling, searching for something, go in and buy it. But the mid funnel part is actually where you win the game. And I would argue that the stronger a brand can kind of expose their services or products or brand in an early stage to a potential buyer, the stronger they will come out in the low funnel. And I think that's where native plays a big role, because native is I would argue, a perfect format to actually engage with users super early on, even in a way where they don't feel that they are exposed to advertising, but they are exposed to useful information about a product or a service. So that when they are ready to buy that, you will come up as top of the list. And this we can see over and over again. And we have like car brands who have done this for years super successfully, bridging the gap between, high level and low funnel. And it requires, of course, an ongoing strategy. It's not a one campaign thing, but those who execute it very well, they can see a remarkable uplift in the lower funnel as well.
Okay. So it sounds like one of the strong use cases then is products and services that have a long sales cycle. So from the moment to thinking I might be buying a new car to actually buying a new car, sometimes that can be 6 months, 12 months. It could be even longer. If you had a lease car and you had a 2-year lease, you might even start thinking about it, further ahead of that. So if I've understood you correctly, and please shoot me down if I haven't, it's an awareness display campaign that gets BMW, let's say, to the top of your mind, makes you start thinking about BMW. And then there's a native content campaign that starts driving interesting content long before you're ready to go for a test drive, but starts to sort of deepen that relationship between that potential customer and BMW, whether that be on the features, the benefits, how eco it is, miles per gallon, whatever it might be, but just building on their overall information about what they know about that car. Shazia Ganai, who was on this podcast many years ago, worked at a company called Neuro Insight, and they used to measure how people, you remember? Yeah. And she calls it the brand room in your brain, and furnishing that brand room. So, and the example I always give is the Cadbury brand room would probably be purple with a drumming gorilla in the corner, so it's basically just adding more information into that brand room to make it very simplistic. Of course, it isn't that simplistic. So that when there is, when that person does get to the point when they're ready to start going on test drives and selecting what car they want, they're much more deeply invested in the idea of the BMW. Is that
100%? And I think actually it works for all kind of brands. I mean, like even FMCG brands, it works the same way. The story might be different, but I think that the more you can get them to engage with your brand or your service in a way where they actually feel that they are not exposed for advertising, because that's exactly what they don't want to be. And that's where native comes in. You can have whatever. We have like one of the biggest dairy brand in Finland have been doing always on for 4 years ongoing with us. And it's all about, getting the user engaging with their recipes and their products. And long term, that will come out as a winning concept. So I think it's not only like the expensive, products with a long sales cycle. It works on all levels.
So a brand that just sprung to mind when you were talking there is Red Bull. So that Red Bull create a lot of content, don't they? High energy, water sports, skiing, motorbikes, spinning in the air and all the rest of it. And the idea there is that they're not selling you a can of Red Bull there and then in the moment, but they're bringing that sort of idea that Red Bull gives you wings and it's, it's high octane, high energy stuff. And so content, perhaps if you're a brand that's creating content to try and make those associations in the mind, then native would be a great way to drive to that content and get people to engage with it when they're not ready to buy, so that when they are ready to buy, they think of you, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Very good. So the dairy company or any case study for that matter, but if you're talking about what's affectionately known as the messy middle and trying to tidy up that messy middle, it's obviously one step away in the funnel to the click, which too many companies rely on the last click, right? And that's what gets measured and stuff. So how do you see brands measuring this dairy company that you mentioned? If they've been always on for 4 years, they're obviously seeing something working, right? So how do they measure that uplift in messy middle? What does that look like?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think the key there is exactly what you mentioned yourself, is the engagement times. So of course, anyone or everyone would love to have, conversions and validate. And even today, I think we're talking even more about, CFOs stepping into the marketing department, having a lot of opinions on how those should return their investments and stuff. But I think that, one of the main measurements should be the engagement, and engagement should also lead to conversions over time. I think that, even though, I think you can reach the right audience, even though they wouldn't convert straight ahead. I think that it's all about seeing the quality of the traffic, see the engagement on the page, are they then returning to the page? And this is the tough part, because, in many cases, that's hard to motivate. Why should we put money into this? But that's also kind of the background with content marketing. When content marketing came about, especially digitally as well, it was a lot of talk about that you have to do persistent, you have to put out more content, and you won't see the results straight ahead. It requires half a year of work or 1 year strategy to get anywhere, but when it does, it pays off big time. And I think that to a big extent, we have lost that in the programmatic world, where everything have to be fast, it have to be targeted, it have to be conversions. So I think that we are seeing a bit of bounce back in that as well. And we have even big agencies who have done studies comparing us on top level branding and awareness campaigns with display. And we come out of the top, where you could argue that native is not a top funnel or brand awareness kind of format. But still, even there in the comparisons, we perform better than standard display.
Okay. It'd be really interesting, wouldn't it, to figure out, obviously this podcast is sponsored by Lumen, the eye tracking technology company, and it'd be really interesting to see how much attention on the front end native advertising gets versus display. Because I haven't seen that study from Lumen. I haven't seen anything on native, but I know standard IAB display formats on average get 1.2 seconds. And we just talked about us getting 25 minutes on content on the 6 Hours website, which is a big difference. It pays to be the content if you can be. And one of the sort of selling points of native advertising, I like you, I grew up in working in press before the internet even exists. I'm so old. And advertorials were great because it was content that engaged the user, but it felt like content. It didn't feel like you were advertising to somebody. So it's a much softer sell, isn't it? Which does definitely, I think, I get your point 100% about the messy middle, but I think it also could work at the top of the funnel as well. If you're just trying, with my Red Bull example, if you're just trying to get people to make that association between your brand and a certain feeling, or, like Red Bull gives you wings, that's very easy to do before you want to buy a Red Bull.
That's very interesting. I mean, on the topic, we're at the moment implementing some tech for attention metrics. And I'm super curious to see how that plays out. Because if you think about it, if you have a news site and you have display, the whole point is to kind of stick out, grab the attention to that specific ad. So the logic would be that the more you scream and the more colors or whatever you try to pop up there, it should grab the attention from all the other content. And then you have native that should blend in. Of course, it's clearly marked as an ad and the brand, but then it's very following the rest of the site with a picture and a headline and a teaser. So the question is that can that actually have the same attention as super flashy ad? What will be interesting to see in the data is the attention metric actually correlating with the click-through rates? Since we are optimizing the campaigns for engaged users, as you said. So that engagement can't come true without grabbing the attention. So the question is that will they be correlating very well or not? But on the other hand, if you think about human behavior, when you read a news site, You rather actually read every single headline. And based on that, you decide, are you going to engage? And you are thought to jump over or skip the ads to the next headline. So from other point of view, I could imagine that even just if you would look at the attention from a headline point of view, it will have a higher attention than many display or rich media formats. The data will tell.
Yeah, it will. I mean, it makes perfect sense. And I think there's a certain amount of banner blindness, right? Whereas if you read the Telegraph, I'll say, because I used to work there, I always use it as an example. Other newspapers are available. But if you read the Telegraph every single day, you get used to the idea and where your eyes need to start. You know, as you come in, there's going to be a certain amount of advertising, then there's going to be the masthead, then there's going to be the main story, then there's going to be the sub-stories. And you kind of your eyes almost trained to know where to go. So it's really interesting what you just said there, which makes perfect sense, but it's kind of goes against everything that advertising is about. It's like you want to blend in, not stand out. Yeah. You want to look like all of the other news sites, news stories. And it does, doesn't it? Like I've seen obviously been into your UI and the colors around the trim and the colors of the company name and the call to action and stuff like that kind of mimic the trim colors around the rest of the website. And so, yeah, it's advertising that tries to blend in. I like that. We used to say back in the day in print, classified advertisings were adverts that the user sought, and display advertising was advertising that sought the reader. And I guess you're in that first bucket, right? Yeah,
that's true. And I that's also one of the reasons why we were super keen to keep a click CPC pricing model, because we, in our philosophy, even though it's valuable that you're seen on those pages, but the added value for the brand doesn't come from an impression, but actually someone clicked through and engaged with the content behind that. So from that point of view, I think also we can stick very true to blending in, because we can also offer the advertisers that you only pay with whoever engages with your ad. And so that makes sense both from the premium ad experience part of view, but also from the CPC and brand point of view, where you only pay for engaged users. And that's what we're, of course, trying to optimize towards.
Yeah, and it also makes the publisher and Readpeak accountable, right? Yeah. So everyone could talk a good game, get a CPM campaign, deliver it in full and go, yeah, it delivered, but you're actually optimized towards the end outcome for the advertiser, and you don't get paid if you don't do it. So
we made it even harder for ourselves, because we're fully transparent site list, so we can't fake the traffic from anywhere else. And if it doesn't work, it's on us. Then we have to work on our part. So I think, but we like to be in that spot where we really have to deliver in order for it to make sense for the brands.
For sure. So if we think about, you mentioned car brands before, obviously they're big advertisers in any country. Have you got like a case study that you're able to talk about that sort of talks about how they perhaps integrated native in the messy middle above their display and performance advertising and how that kind of
I think like in the Nordics, one of the car brands that have run a lot with us is of course BMW. And there's a lot you could say. What I would actually give credits to them for is how they work with native. They really like built a strategy on how to work with native in the mid, pushing or guiding users towards the lower end. But also their creative team have implemented that super strongly. And one thing that they told us that they did really early on, that they when they built their campaigns, they selected their premium sites and they had their creatives, and they are, by the way, very good at the creative. So they create multiple ad variations for one ad group, and it's A/B testing in real time through the machine learning that what works on what site. But after quarterly campaign, they take all the raw data and they analyze it, and they figure out that actually those ad works best for this audience on those sites. So they take that information and data back to the creative team to produce more similar content, not in the next campaign, but even on their website. So if they can see that this audience actually engages with topics on sustainable materials in the interior, then they start producing more material for that. And that's actually quite smart, because that's one of the fastest ways to A/B test that what kind of topics resonates with the user. And they use that to even, improve their website experience.
Yeah, that's very cool. So you're living in the UK at the moment. Yeah. How's it going? What's the plan?
So far, so good. as rainy as in Finland, I guess.
It's pretty cold in Finland at the moment, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, it's supposed to be, but this winter is like very different.
Right.
Let's see, maybe it's still coming. But
So you're meeting with lots of clients, agencies.
yeah.
Trying to get yourself out there. Yeah, excellent. Well, Thomas, it's been a pleasure. As I say, this is another first for me. Ended up working with you as your client, and then you working with us as you being our client as well. Just to reiterate, you didn't pay for this podcast. This is just the Six Sales podcast, as it always is. No one's paid for anything here, but I am a really big fan, and I can't wait to help our clients to benefit from your tech. So thank you for that. Exciting year ahead, and thank you very much for being on the Six Sales podcast.
Very nice to be here. Thank you.